And to assess this new bill on policing, we sat down with Congressman Russ Fulcher of Idaho. Idaho Congressman Russ Fulcher, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me today.
Congressman, your colleagues on the other side, the Democrats today, they're really pushing a bill to vote on to fund the police. Why do you think we're seeing this sudden push?
Imagine that, after this long-standing effort to defund the police, restructure law enforcement in America and make it much more of a social program. Now all of a sudden they have a mindset change. And shocking, isn't it? I mean, you look at the crime levels in Chicago and New Orleans, and they are seeing the blowback of that. They see the American people are just disgusted with this whole effort in trying to govern with a nation that doesn't honor rule of law anymore. And so now, 40 days prior to an election, all of a sudden, maybe they're starting to see the light.
Congressman, you mentioned the elections. It's a time when I'm sure you hear more from your constituents from both sides of the aisle. What are you hearing are some of the main issues?
Very, very clearly, you got inflation and the gas prices, the grocery prices right up there. You've got the whole energy issue. You've got the security issue, which is both rule of law and law enforcement and supporting that, and the southern border, where the horrifically bad trafficking is taking place and the illegal immigration. And you know what? That's the case all the way across my state. And I've been going to other states as well, trying to help some of my colleagues in their election races. And it's the same there. It doesn't matter. Red state, blue state, swing state, the same issues. And that's it. It's inflation and security in one form or another, one of those two things.
Congressman, why do you think we're seeing a lot of Democratic voters, specifically a lot of immigrant constituents and voters, that are leaning toward the Republican stance on illegal immigration?
Because they're getting overrun. They're seeing the negativity that the mainstream media refuses to report or tries to filter. They're realizing that an open border is not compassion. An open border is tragic for everyone, the existing American citizen taxpayer and for the people coming across the border. If you don't have a filter, if you don't have a rule of law and rules governing the process, then by default, in our case, the cartels take over. And they're controlling it. And their interests are human trafficking, drug trafficking, the whole illegal immigration component where they make money off of. People see that. You don't have to, it's a nonpartisan issue. Everyone is being damaged by this. The Democrats are seeing that, which is one of the main reasons why I think we're going to see a significant change in November.
Over in Texas, cartels from Mexico are now considered foreign terrorists. Governor Greg Abbott declared this in an executive order he signed on Wednesday. Abbott blamed the cartels for the growing fentanyl crisis in the state. He says he wants to reclassify fentanyl overdoses as fentanyl poisoning. Then drug providers would be charged with murder if someone dies of an overdose. And last week, Senator Marco Rubio introduced a bill that would make it a felony murder charge to distribute fentanyl if it resulted in death. The senator said, quote, "This deadly drug is widespread throughout our country and has left no community untouched. This bill would make drug dealers pay the price for selling deadly fentanyl." In Rubio's home state of Florida, authorities this week shut down a fentanyl operation and seized more than 8 kilograms of the drug. That's enough to kill more than 4 million people. Major banks pulled investments from Russia after the invasion of Ukraine. So now the question turns to what they do if China invades Taiwan. Top bank executives are grilled in a congressional hearing. NTD's Iris Tao has more on their answers.
JP Morgan.
Top executives of the largest U.S. banks are here testifying before Congress and getting pressed on thorny issues like China.
Should the CCP follow through on its threat to invade Taiwan, are your banks prepared to pull your investments out of China?
We'll follow the government's guidance, which has been for decades to do, to work with China. And if they change that position, we'll immediately change it as we did in Russia.
The questioning comes as lawmakers warn about risks of investing in volatile nations ruled by dictatorships.
And number two, your investments play a significant role in supporting those nations' economies.
And here's what the head of JP Morgan says when asked
if an invasion of an American ally would be enough for JP Morgan to make the moral determination to stop doing business with the Chinese Communist Party.
We'll have to decide when that happens.
And on the question of they support a free and democratic Taiwan,
I support freedom and democracy everywhere. I'm not going to specifically comment on Taiwan.
the CEO of Citigroup, meanwhile, says they will likely have a reduced presence in China if it invades Taiwan. But outright condemning the regime's human rights record is another story.
So will you condemn the ongoing human rights abuses in China at the hands of the Chinese Communist Party?
Condemn is a very strong word.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So is genocide and slavery.
Yes. We certainly are very distressed to see it going on, and we do not want to have human rights abuses happening anywhere in the world.
Wall Street giants, including JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, have in recent years tried to expand their businesses in China, the world's second largest economy. And Senator Tommy Tuberville tells NTD that more people need to recognize the Chinese regime for what it is.
They're our number one adversary, but we've got a lot of corporations that are pumping up China and giving them the opportunity to finance what they need to in their military to possibly one day go into Taiwan.
Meanwhile, China responded to the hearing on Thursday, saying the U.S. should stop making an issue out of Taiwan. The acrimony comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Friday, and Taiwan is expected to be a topic of discussion. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Former President Trump is responding to New York Attorney General Letitia James's lawsuit. He denies James's allegations that his company engaged in financial fraud. Trump reposted an article on Truth Social saying, quote, Trump did not inflate his financial statements as prosecutors had anticipated, but instead undervalued his assets. He also shared videos showing how James has campaigned on an anti-Trump platform before becoming Attorney General. The New York Attorney General on Wednesday announced that she has sued Trump and his company. She alleges that they have inflated the values of their assets and defrauded $250 million in the process. When the pandemic ushered in a so-called new normal of remote learning, this opened the door for parents to see what their children were actually learning in school. Well, what they found out might be surprising to some. Here to discuss, we have the founder of the nonprofit Freedom Forever, Landon Starbuck. Landon Starbuck, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, the pandemic seems to have opened up a Pandora's box of sorts, with parents getting a bird's eye view of their children's curriculum. What have moms like you been finding?
Well, we've been seeing an agenda, sadly, to sexualize children. It wasn't just the porn in the libraries, it's in the schools, it's on the Chromebooks. And this agenda to sexualize kids is about Marxism infiltrating the academic institutions from the top down. And we're seeing this erosion of childhood innocence. And that is fundamentally because they believe that children's innocence are a construct of cis heteronormativity that has to be dismantled.
It's interesting, you mentioned Marxism. How widespread is this, and have you figured out what or who is actually behind this?
Well, I think a lot of nefarious interests benefit from a Marxist ideological education. And I think that we've seen that all across the United States. In some form, Marxism has penetrated the education system because on a national standard, government education has to be allegiant down to the cellular level in the cities and the states. And this is why we're seeing things like school choice bills so that we can escape the bondage of these mandates that are Marxian theory, critical theory, and indoctrinating our children.
Now, because a light has actually been shined on this situation, there is some pushback from certain groups. There's something called Banned Books Week going on right now, where librarians across the country who are in support of this can promote these books that you're talking about. What would you recommend to concerned parents out there?
Absolutely. Well, my nonprofit Freedom Forever put out a call to action yesterday, encouraging parents to go and document, print out the printouts of the obscene content that they are promoting to children. I actually went to my library yesterday and had a conversation with a librarian who was proud to promote these banned books, yet she had no idea what was in one of the most problematic books, which is This Book is Gay, where they actually encourage kids to go online and meet adults on sexual websites where they give instructionals on obscene content. I can't even say some of this on air of what they're subjecting our children to. So once we had that conversation, we were able to take that next step, and that is what we've outlined for parents so that they can actually take action.
Now, a prominent group called Gays Against Groomers has actually just been canceled by some of these major corporations. These are gay folks against all of this gender ideology that you're speaking about. What do you make of this?
Well, I love what they're doing, and I think it's remarkable how they've gotten together and they have been such dedicated activists for this cause. They've been so effective that they're being canceled. That's how you know you're being effective. When you start getting censored, when you start getting banned, when people start saying, oh no, Landon Starbuck is coming to our library, look out for her, then you know that you are over the target. So I commend what they're doing, and I hope that they keep expanding, and I'll continue supporting the work they do.
Landon Starbuck, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.